Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: Israel steps up its attacks across the Gaza Strip despite the ruling by the United Nations top court to immediately stop its offensive in Rafah. But Israel maintains it has the right to defend its people and that it'll continue its just and necessary campaign in Gaza. Our other headlines: the desperate search continues. Hundreds of people feared dead, scores still trapped after a landslide hit Papua New Guinea. And it's the world's largest election, and perhaps the hottest too. 100 million people are going to the polls in India in sweltering temperatures. Israel has continued to strike the Gazan city of Rafah despite an order from the United Nations highest court that it'll immediately stop its offensive. Israeli forces are intensifying their assault across the Gaza Strip, attacking central Gaza and the Jabalia refugee camp in the north. More families are fleeing the camp in heavy fighting and worsening food shortages. Meanwhile, aid agencies say food bound for Gaza is beginning to rot after being stuck at the Egyptian border for weeks. The Palestinian envoy to the United Nations says he welcomes the International Court of Justice order demanding Israel reopen the Rafah crossing.
We would like to say there are more decisions by the ICJ that called for a ceasefire, a halt to the military operations that threaten civilians in Gaza, and to the opening of the Rafah border crossing to allow the aid flow to the Gaza Strip and prevent the forced displacement of the 800,000 people in Rafah or those across the Gaza Strip. We welcome all these decisions and we call for Israel to obey them, since we believe that the decisions of the ICJ are obligatory to parties that signed the Impact of Anti-Genocide. Therefore, Israel has no choice but to obey the decisions.
Our correspondent Akram al-Satari reports now from Gaza.
Well, the total number of Palestinians who were killed in the last 24 hours is 46 people, which means 2 Palestinians every hour. The bombardment is still continuous. The number of people who were injured is 130 people. The bombardment is continuous in all different parts of Gaza Strip, in the north, in central Gaza, in Khan Yunis, and also in Rafah. Rafah has been witnessing increased tension and has been witnessing extended bombardments in the Gaza, in Rafah East area and Rafah Central area. The Israeli occupation forces are using the artillery fire, are using the F-16, and are using as well the quadcopters that have been targeting different people in the different conjunctions of the streets and also nearby the Rafah Eastern area. The situation is ever escalating and the bombardment have been heard all over the area. I was coming to this place and I could see a very big black cloud over the city of Rafah, which is indicative of the increased bombardment that has been plaguing the people in that area. People are still moving from the areas that are considered safe, such as Tal al-Sultan area, and seeking refuge and shelter in different parts of Khan Yunis and Gaza Central area. So the situation is still catastrophic and is even aggravating.
The International Court of Justice has also ordered Israel to open the Rafah crossing to allow the unhindered provision of aid, as it says. What is the situation there now?
Well, as a matter of fact, the flow of the trucks was extremely slow, even before the full control of the Israeli forces over the 2 terminals, which are Rafah and Rafah border and Kerem Shalom. The situation has been catastrophic. The entry of the truckloads was extremely slow, and there were around 15,000 trucks waiting at the other side of the border. So some of the goods are already rotten. Some of the stuff that is sent to the people to help them and save their lives is already expired. The trucks are waiting, and some extra charges are now taken for the sake of just keeping the trucks in the queue to enter the Gaza Strip. Now, ever since Israel controlled Rafah crossing and Kerem Shalom, the situation is even getting more tense and becoming more critical. There's nothing that has been allowed into Gaza, and now they're agreeing on the entry of 200 trucks a day, and according to the Egyptian sources, there are 5,000 trucks that are waiting. If there are 5,000 trucks that are waiting outside of the Rafah border, how many days do they need to allow the entry? And saying 200 trucks is somehow sounding like they are restricting the number of trucks that are entering the Gaza Strip. The actual need to those trucks in Gaza is extremely profound, and the actual number of trucks that are needed is around 1,000 trucks a day, maybe minimum 800,000 a day. So there are some restrictions on the number of trucks that are allowed into Gaza, the quality of stuff that is allowed into Gaza, and I think the way this whole thing has been treated is allowing the expiration of the stuff that is sent to Gaza and is bringing about more suffering amongst the population that have already been suffering a lot.
Well, Israel has called the ICJ's order to immediately stop its assault on Rafah outrageous, morally repugnant and disgusting. Our correspondent Jonathan Redjev is in Tel Aviv. Jonathan, what further reaction from Israel to the United Nations Court ruling?
This is pretty much the music that we've been hearing from Israel, an outrageous decision and one that will not stop Israel. And it's not only coming from extreme elements within the government, such as far-right ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. It also came from War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz, saying that Israel needs to continue with the war. And if there was something that was extremely outrageous for Israelis, it's the fact that 125 hostages are still in Gaza, and that has hardly been mentioned by the ICJ ruling. They were speaking about the suffering of the people in Rafah, which no one in Israel denies, by the way, but not speaking at all about the fact that 125 hostages are still held in Gaza, not speaking about the fact that the October 7th attack is what led to this situation, and therefore outrage here in Israel and an absolute no-go for any decision of the ICJ to stop the war. The war in Rafah is ongoing, and Israel has no plans to stop it.
Away from Gaza, Jonathan, we're seeing reports of Israeli strikes on Hezbollah targets in Syria. What more are you hearing about that?
That is correct, and we're constantly speaking about Gaza, but we have to understand that in the northern borders of Israel, with Lebanon, with Syria, there's a full-on war. It's ongoing all the time. There might not be a ground operation over in those borders, but there is constant exchange of fire. And this morning, an attack coming in Syria. We're hearing that 2 people have been killed. Israel, when it comes to attacks in Syria, Israel usually does not take responsibility, but it's quite understood in this region that if there is an attack in Syria targeting Iranian targets, targeting Hezbollah targets, then probably Israel is the one behind it. This morning, just another one of those strikes on Hezbollah installations. If in the past, before October 7th, Israel was very careful not to hit direct Hezbollah targets within Syria and, of course, within Lebanon, now it is completely different. We're seeing practically every day exchange of fire, mostly within Lebanon and Israel, meaning Hezbollah attacking from Lebanon and Israel striking back. But there are also many installations in Syria belonging to Hezbollah, belonging to other Iranian proxies, and Israel is constantly attacking them. This morning was just the latest example.
Jonathan, thank you for that. Our correspondent Jonathan Redjev in Tel Aviv. Now the rest of the day's news, and hundreds of people are now feared dead after a massive landslide leveled dozens of homes and buried families alive in a remote village in Papua New Guinea. Difficult terrain and damage to main roads is hampering rescue efforts as more emergency teams try to reach the isolated area. Imo Chen lives in the community.
On local time 24th May, 3 a.m. in the morning, an heavy landslide took place at Kaukalam village, Mai Mulitaka in Enga province. The place was distant around 60 kilometers from Babek district capital of Enga province. From what I have observed so far from social media, this chaotic disaster has took life of more than 200 people. The detailed casualties are yet to be known due to the landslide that buried the bodies deep underneath the rubble. From what I know, Enga provincial government has dispatched emergency rescue unit yesterday immediately after the disaster has occurred. Besides that, they also bought goods and materials to aid the people there. It is common to experience landslides in highlands region, but this is the first time for us to meet such a chaotic natural disaster.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, why complaints about pollution and parties could see tourist riverboats banned from Budapest.
This week on Razor, trying to better understand our universe by moving beyond the standard model of particle physics.
If the standard model was the only correct theory, that would tell us the probability that something would happen when we collide these protons. So you would have a certain probability of creating a Higgs boson. The Higgs boson would have a certain probability of decaying into particles that we would then see in our detectors.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Israel steps up its attacks across the Gaza Strip, despite the ruling by the United Nations top court to immediately stop its offensive in Rafah. But Israel maintains it has the right to defend its people and that it will continue its just and necessary campaign in Gaza. Our other headlines: the desperate search continues. Hundreds of people feared dead and scores still trapped after a landslide hit Papua New Guinea. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing an exodus of departing Conservative members of Parliament, with nearly 80 announcing they will not be seeking re-election. The long-serving Cabinet Minister Michael Gove is the most high-profile to step down ahead of the vote in July. Earlier this week, Sunak, who's been in power since 2022, called the general election, but his party is trailing in the polls after a period of high inflation, low growth, and a series of political scandals. Well, the world's largest election continues amid a deadly heatwave. Indians are voting in Phase 6 of the general election there as temperatures surge to 47 degrees Celsius in the capital, New Delhi. More than 111 million people in 58 constituencies are eligible to vote in this phase. Our correspondent Ravinder Bauer reports.
The temperatures have been extreme in northern India, especially, and also in central India during this polling contest, which started about, few weeks back. So yes, in Delhi today, which is the 6th phase, things are quite heated up in terms of the opposition contesting with the party in power, but at the same time the voters are struggling, and of course you can see that a lot of shaded areas, water, wheelchairs and paramedics and all these kind of arrangements made by the Election Commission to ensure that voter turnout is not impacted, which has been the case in this election. Because of more heat wave days and because of extreme temperatures, there has been an impact on the voter turnout, which Election Commission is concerned about, along with the political parties who are in the fray. Well, over the last 6 weeks, we have seen various issues coming to the foreground from various parties, but definitely the present dispensation concentrating more on providing a stable government, on talking about the development that they have done in the last 10 years. They are talking about the fact that, they have taken India to the world map, and now India it plays a major role in international politics, and they are also, playing to the national sentiment of the Indians who are out there to vote. Apart from that, of course, religious sentiment is also important for this political party because of the Ram temple which was built and which has been inaugurated, and so it is playing with the religious and the nationalistic sentiment of a lot of voters. On the other hand, the opposition is talking about issues like unemployment, inflation, which are on the rise in the country, and they are impacting not just the youth but overall every household. Savings have gone down. The households are only trying to just now spend on food, so that is the kind of inflation people and the voters are dealing with. So that's what the opposition is trying to concentrate on. So these are the issues which are in the fray as far as Delhi is concerned. About 80% of the population here is a working class population who are living in slum clusters, and they are the main voters. And for them, sanitation, clean water, good housing, free electricity, these are the kind of issues that really matter. So apart from national issues, the local issues are also playing a role in the way the voter is going to vote this time.
And South Africa's political parties have staged huge rallies ahead of Wednesday's general election, set to be the most tightly contested since the end of apartheid. The polls suggest the ruling ANC party may lose its majority for the first time after 30 years in power. Its leader, the incumbent Cyril Ramaphosa, appeared before a huge crowd in Johannesburg. Meanwhile, the opposition leader, Julius Malema, greeted supporters at his final rally. Ukrainian authorities say that at least 2 people have been killed after Russian forces hit a hypermarket in the city of Kharkiv. The emergency services are at the scene, and President Volodymyr Zelensky said more than 200 people could have been inside when it was attacked. The market is in a residential area. The United Nations says escalating violence in conflict-torn Myanmar's Rakhine state has forced another 45,000 Rohingyas to flee. There are reports of killings, beheadings and arson attacks as clashes intensify between the military and the Arakan army rebels. Rohingya have faced persecution in Buddhist-majority Myanmar for decades. Some families of the victims of the Ilvada school shooting in the United States have launched legal action against 3 companies they say helped to train the gunman. They have sued Meta, Activision Blizzard, the maker of the video game Call of Duty, and the gun company on the 2nd anniversary of the attack in Texas. 18-year-old Salvador Ramos killed 19 students and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School. The River Danube is Europe's 2nd longest river. While it's historically important, it's also crucial to the region's economic and cultural development, attracting visitors from all around the world. But many residents in Hungary's capital have long complained about the pollution and the noise from river traffic. Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports now from Budapest.
Thousands of tourists flock to riverboats every day along Budapest's Danube riverfront. Some want scenic cruises and dinners, while others love the party boats, offering cheap and unlimited alcohol. Their presence and behavior isn't always welcome.
These people don't really leave the neighborhood, but they stay here. I have to mention that there is no proper infrastructure. There are no restrooms down there or anywhere. So they climb into the park, they do their job between cars, anywhere, because they have to go.
Marta Kisheli, a community advocate, and her neighbors have been pushing to relocate most riverboats outside of Budapest city center. Besides the nuisance from the party boat patrons, Kisheli says a more serious issue caused by the boats is affecting them.
There are no boats with an environmentally safe engines running, okay? No boats at all.
A recent air quality test by Greenpeace found that the neighborhood near the riverboat docks is one of the city's most polluted areas. Activists say that the daily air pollution from the docked boats and tourist buses is causing health problems for residents in the neighborhood.
It's very dangerous. I mean, it's really bad for our health. it causes cancer. If you have any kind of respiratory problems, it is very suffocating.
The city has responded to the residents' complaints by promising to reduce the number of docks along the river. Riverboat operators, though, are not pleased with the plan.
They said that 5 ports can stay, and these ports can be used to drop off the passengers or to get on the boats. The reason we see this a problem is because it will increase air pollution, it will increase traffic jams on the water, and it will increase the risk of safety because many ships will wait on the water.
Last year, Budapest riverboats hosted around 4 million visitors. Operators argued that the reduction in docks would not only impact their businesses, but could also push tourists to neighboring cities like Vienna and Bratislava, which could lead to job losses here. Riverboat operators say the city of Budapest should build more docks along the Danube to reduce congestion in this area. They also want docking permits to be issued every 10 years instead of annually, and government subsidies so they can invest in cleaner engines. Approximately 50 vessels could be forced to relocate under the city's supervision to less central suburban mooring locations that have not yet been built. Operators say they are planning to fight back against the plan.
The whole city was built around these ships in the past centuries. So we say there should be a regulation, there should be a good practice, there should be a regulation over what type of services we can give here, but banning out of the ships is not the solution.
As both sides gear up for change, the battle to safeguard the city's quality of life and keep its tourism alive stays afloat. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, Budapest.
Formula E, the world's first net-zero all-electric motorsport series, is back in China for the first time in 5 years. It's made its debut in Shanghai with March's Mitch Evans from Jaguar winning the first of a double-header of races this weekend. The first ever Formula E race was at Beijing's Olympic Green Circuit. It was won by Audi's Luca de Grassi, who went on, of course, to race in Formula One. Formula E's fan base hit a record high last season with 344 million viewers all around the world, meaning that it's now the 4th most watched motorsport. It's also becoming a rather lucrative business, with sponsorship revenue reaching more than $100 million for the 2023-24 season. And plans have been verbally agreed to hold an all-female Formula E test event in November. Formula E hopes that it'll pave the way for women to get a regular seat from 2026, when power-assisted steering is going to be brought in. Well, Tom Brooks is the Formula E's lead commentator. I asked him about the atmosphere at the first race in Shanghai.
It's amazing down here. Genuinely, it's one of the best Formula E races we've been to all season. Everybody loves Formula E, and especially here in Asia. It's where the championship began back in 2014, and there's a lot of excitement around coming back to here for the first time since 2019, and it's been wonderful. All the fans have been fantastic, the weather's been brilliant, and we've had some great racing this weekend.
What is the significance of Formula E's return to China?
I don't think it can be overstated, really, how important it is for Formula E to come back to China. I mean, EVs in general are a huge market now, and China has really been at the epicenter of that for the last few years in particular, and there's a huge atmosphere and appetite in particular for EVs, and that's represented by the audience that we've had here, which have turned out so positively to see Formula E returning and to a new city and a new circuit this weekend.
Formula E has a short history, doesn't it? I mean, how much has Formula E grown over the past years, and how much has it changed?
Hugely. It began back in 2014 as an idea on a napkin, and during that time we've had 3 generations of cars. We're now on the 3rd generation. The cars are more powerful, they're lighter than ever, the racing is closer than ever. We had 22 drivers separated by 0.6 of a second in qualifying today, and in the race we had 10 drivers separated by just over 2 seconds. It was incredibly, incredibly close. the racing has evolved and it continues to do so. We're heading into what we call the Gen 3 Evo, so it's the same car but with four-wheel drive, 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, which is a really exciting prospect. The cars will be faster than ever and the racing should be more exciting than ever.
This started off as being rather marginal stuff. It's now mainstream. And I wonder to what extent does Formula E promote going electric?
Massively. Again, it can't be overstated how important Formula E has been for that, not only in terms of just bringing international electric racing to the stage, also in terms of what manufacturers have done. We've had manufacturers such as Audi, such as BMW. Currently, we've got Porsche in there. We've got Jaguar, and Jaguar in particular are going to an all-EV lineup from 2025. In fact, the last internal combustion engine car rolled off the production line in the UK just the other day. So it's had a massive impact on that. And the technology that's developed within Formula E, it all trickles down to road cars. And it's been hugely important for that and for its incredible growth and development over the last 10 years.
Historically, going back well over a century of conventional motor racing, it's been dominated by men. It's been boys' toys stuff. What more can you tell us about these plans for an all-female test event later this year?
Yeah, I've heard about that. I mean, obviously, with female racing drivers, there's a lot of initiatives now. We've got the F1 Academy. Prior to that, we had the W Series, and it's fantastic because females generally haven't had the same opportunities as males within a very male-dominated sport. So it's fantastic that Formula E are looking at that and seizing the initiative and looking to try and bring female racing drivers within the single-seater international ladder and bring them up to Formula E, and hopefully we'll have more female Formula E drivers in the future. We've already had a few in the past. We've had a bit of a lull over the last few years, and hopefully this will be the next step to try and kick-start it and get more female drivers on the international single-seater racing level.
And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. More news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's The Agenda with Juliet Mann. For now, from all the news team in London, it's goodbye.